Hello, welcome back to Mrs. Torres' YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about the slope of parallel and perpendicular lines. So if you remember, we reviewed how to identify slopes, right? If I have an equation like this in slope-intercept form, that means our slope, which we use m to represent, would be 4. When it's in slope-intercept, it's the number that's the coefficient of x. So if we were to look for a perpendicular line, the perpendicular line slopes are opposite reciprocals of each other. So opposite refers to the sign. So if it's positive, the perpendicular slope is negative. If your given slope is negative, the perpendicular slope would be positive. And reciprocal means you switch the numerator and the denominator in your fraction. So let's look at an example. If I gave you the slope of your line is negative 2/3, and I asked you for the perpendicular slope, first I would know that it's the opposite, so it's going to be positive, and then reciprocal, we just flip these. So it would be positive 3/2. And parallel lines have the same slope. So if we were looking at the same slope here, a parallel line would have a negative 2/3 slope. So parallel is a little easier. Perpendicular, we need to remember opposite, reciprocal. So let's look at a few examples. So the first one, find the slope of a line parallel and perpendicular to y equals 2x plus 3. First thing we need to do is look at that and figure out what our slope is. Well, that's pretty nice. It's already in slope-intercept form, right? So our slope here is 2. What would the slope of a parallel line be? Well, it's the exact same thing, right? Slope is going to be 2. What about perpendicular? We need the opposite reciprocal. So we have positive 2. The opposite is going to be negative. Now this one's a little tricky. If you have an integer and you write that as a fraction, what's really the denominator here? 2 over what? That's really 2 over 1, right? We just don't write the over 1 part because it's just not necessary. So to get the reciprocal, we flip the numerator and the denominator. So we would get negative 1/2 for our perpendicular slope. All right, let's look at the next example. Find the slope of a line parallel and perpendicular to 5x minus 2y equals 8. So unlike our first example, this is in standard form. It's a little harder to just pick out our slope, right? So what I'm going to do is I am going to use some algebra, and I'm going to put this into slope-intercept form. We want y all by itself. So here I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. So I'll have negative 2y equals negative 5x plus 8. And then we've got to divide everything by negative 2. So that's going to be y equals negative 5 divided by negative 2 would be positive 5/2 x minus 4. So there's our line. It's the same line, just in different forms. So what's our slope here? Well, it's the number that's attached to the x. So our slope is 5/2. A parallel slope is going to be exactly the same, right? Perpendicular slope, we got to work a little bit. It's positive, so we know it's going to be negative. And then we need reciprocal. We flip numerator and denominator. So it's going to be negative 2/5. All right, last one that we're going to look at together. We've got this equation here. Very hard to pick out the slope, right? Let's use some algebra to put that into slope-intercept form so it's very easy to see what our slope is. Our goal is to get y by itself, so I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. 2y equals 4x minus 7. We got to get y by itself, so I divide 2. So y equals 2x minus 7/2. Now it's in slope-intercept form because our y is all by itself. So we look at the number that's attached to the x. That means our slope is 2. That means a parallel slope is going to be 2. And a perpendicular slope is going to be negative 1/2. All right, these I want you to try on your own, but first I'm going to change these equations. I accidentally just copied exactly what was up here. So let's change this first one to y equals negative 3/4 x minus 1. And let's change this second one to 2x plus 3y equals 10. All right, go ahead and pause the video and try these. All right, welcome back. So let's quickly go over these. Our first equation is already in slope-intercept form. So my slope is negative 3/4. A parallel slope is going to be exactly the same. My perpendicular slope, is going to be opposite reciprocal. So positive 4/3. In the second one, we would have to take this and change it into slope-intercept form. When we do that, we get y equals negative 2/3 x plus 10/3. So our slope, negative 2/3. Parallel slope, negative 2/3. Perpendicular slope, opposite reciprocal. So positive 3/2. And the last one, if we use algebra to put it in slope-intercept form, we're going to get y equals 1/3 x plus 5/2. So our slope is that number attached to the x, so 1/3. Parallel slope is exactly the same. Perpendicular slope is opposite reciprocal. So opposite of a positive is a negative. And if we flip these, we're going to get 3/1 or just 3. All right, that's it for today.